motion passes. We are now on item 3, call to the audience. We have finally gotten a chance to reinstitute our call to the audience, and I'll just remind the speakers. I have 4 requests here, and we'll call on them. I remind everyone that they have a 3-minute time limit, and also allow them to submit any written comments that they would like for our files. So thank you for the several folks I know who are here, and we'll go ahead and kick that off, and I'll ask Bill Adamson to come up and address the.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. Sometimes I don't speak very loud, but the mic helps.
You can also pick up the mic and hold it closer to your mouth. That might help a little bit.
Yeah, very good. Unaccustomed as I am to public speaking. But my name is Bill Adamson. I'm a resident of Green Valley, an outdoor recreation enthusiast and avid cyclist. I participated in the original RTA, both as a BAC member, that's the Tucson-Pima County Bicycle Advisory Committee, and as a citizen member of the RTA Bike Ped Working Group. We prioritized implementation of RTA bike ped projects. Many worthwhile RTA projects were completed, but it's a disgrace that bike ped accidents and deaths due to conflicts with motor vehicles continue. And they're unacceptably high. The next RTA needs to make roads safe for all users, not just for motorists. And RTA Next needs to make biking and walking a safe option for travel to local destinations. Our team, RTA Next, needs to make biking and walking a safe option to travel to local destinations. Our team includes BAC member from Green Valley, David Lynn, the town of Sahuarita representative to BAC, Bob Smith, and the chairman of our infrastructure planning committee, Tom Wilstead. Tom will, when called to speak, will give you input, recommendations for RTA Next. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. The aforementioned Tom Wilstead is next on our list.
Hello, my name is Tom Wilstead, and I'm the convener of the South Pima County Cycling Infrastructure Planning Group. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the board. RTA has made a significant impact on Pima County's transportation needs over the past 17 years, improved roads, better public transportation, and a more cohesive infrastructure. In planning for RTA Next, the board must try to imagine what life will be like in 2046 and plan accordingly. That is an awesome responsibility for you all. I come here to speak about where I live, Southern Pima County, and my concerns, safety of walking and cycling community, and the environment. South Pima County, Sahuarita and Green Valley are growing rapidly, keeping pace or exceeding Tucson's growth. Sahuarita's growth from 2006 to 2023 was 47%, while Green Valley was growing nearly 10%. That growth is continuing. And if you drive down I-19 and look to the left towards Sahuarita, you will see that it's continuing to grow, as is Quail Creek. All those adults are voters and will want to know how RTA Next will improve their lives and the lives of their children if they are going to vote yes when this comes to pass. As a walker and a cyclist, I'm concerned about safety. The current RTA focused primarily on roads and public transportation, with only 3% of the budget allocated to bike lanes, trails, and paths. And the early projections for RTA Next seem to keep it at the same level. That's not enough. The current trends are any indication we will see a world with more e-bikes, cargo bikes, e-scooters replacing cars and recreation for short trips. However, that will only happen if those paths and trails are safe. As a board, you need to think about those adults who will be riding and adjust that budget accordingly. Finally, the board needs to be concerned about cars and the impact of the environment. Spending more and more money on roads only encourages higher levels of traffic. While electric cars will improve the situation, we need to get people out of cars and into transportation with lower emission levels. E-bikes, e-scooters, bikes, walking, all can have a huge impact on pollution levels. However, they will only ride if there's a safe place. 3% of the RTA budget will not be enough to make the difference in how people behave. More is needed to make it safe for adults and children to move safely on bike trails, paths, and lanes. We've created a separate submission, which I will present to you. Thank you very much.
This is the mic. Well, thank you for listening to us today. I want to second everything that Tom has said and Bill. I'm the town of Cerritos representative on the Tucson Pima County Bicycle Advisory Committee. And you know, I attend those meetings, and most of the meetings are such that all the conversation is Tucson. County is pretty much left out of the conversation. And, you know, so it's kind of depressing. So I just kind of wanted to bring that to your attention. I want to second everything that Tom said, and we're here to support our group. I'm on the same infrastructure committee as Tom and Bill. So thank you for your time and listening to our issues.
Thank you for speaking. The last one I have is David Lynn.
Yes, my name's David Lynn. I'm on Tucson Pima County Bicycle Advisory Committee. And we're just wanting to get a little more attention out of the urban areas and more into South Central Pima County. There's a lot of cyclists on the road, and there are a lot of bad roads. So we would appreciate your taking the time to consider the needs down south. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Chuck.
Yes, thank you, Tom. I would just like to voice my support for these gentlemen's positions on bike and safety trails down in the southern unincorporated Pima County area. As you know, some of the submissions that we've made through the committee from Green Valley with Dick Roberts have included improved bike trails and multi-use trails for some of the areas that really, it's really in many cases become a safety issue. There's not enough shoulder to ride bikes on. There's certainly not enough shoulder to walk on. And so I just want to go on the record once again as supporting any improvements we can make down in that area as much as we can. So
Thank you. Just a reminder to the committee, this structure of call to the audience doesn't allow us to really discuss those or answer questions or, you know, respond. However, certainly that, as you were talking about, Chuck, is appropriate within our item number 4, which come to right now. So,
Tom, before we move on,
yes.
did we receive letters, email letters to the RTA for this meeting? Because I believe there were people who were writing emails and they were part of this agenda and part of this meeting?
So, Mr. Chair, for the call to the audience, it's only obviously open to the audience. Anything we receive, we track, log, and keep track of it, and it's posted online.
And were the letters that were received for this meeting posted online?
They will be posted online later after the meeting typically.
Okay, even though they were submitted before the agenda came out?
Again, that's our protocol is to just post everything online. They have one of those amigos for the file. Thank you.
Is there a way to adjust that protocol? Because I know at pretty much every other meeting in jurisdictions in our region, they try to include as many of the public comments in advance, since that's really helpful for informing, like, right, if we're making decisions and trying to inform based on public feedback, it's important for us to have that, be equipped with that information in advance of these meetings as much as possible in order to do that. So totally would understand if Friday would have to be the cutoff, so that we all have time over the weekend and stuff to review that. But it would just be really helpful if going forward, all letters emailed in are included and posted and shared out to our committee in advance of the meeting.
Okay, we'll work on that. As I said, this is the first time we've been back to call to the audience, so our process is not exactly perhaps where it's going to be ultimately. So in introducing our item number 4, which is obviously the meat of our meeting, I wanted to mention to everyone that we have basically 3 meetings left. We have 2 this month and then the first Monday in December. And my hope is that today we will discuss the projects within our plan and be able to look now at an entire plan that is all the elements of our plan together, achieve a budget of 2.34 billion as directed by the board. At our next meeting, I would hope then that we could get back to the policy discussion that we began and kind of put on hold a couple months ago. And the purpose of that would then be for our third and final meeting before the board to finalize that, as well as make any changes or modifications that might be necessary. It also gives us a chance, hopefully, for some feedback from the TMC as well. So that's probably a good segue into summary of the TMC meeting. You're aware that several of our CAC members participated at the invitation of the TMC at an ad hoc committee meeting whose purpose really was to establish a ranking for the projects and as a result to try to come up with a way of dealing with the $380-some million deficit, if you will, in funding from the boards and TMC's $1.1 billion budget for corridor projects and the $5 or so billion of actual updated cost estimates for those 33 projects. During the meeting with the TMC, we were allowed to listen to the TMC debate and discuss and frankly help us with justifications for a number of the projects that were below the line, for lack of a better description, those that would would be lower priority and have to find them their way onto a reserve list for there be additional funding to come later in the process, later in the life of RTA Next. So in doing that, we got a good discussion about a number of those projects that were below the line, and it might be helpful for us to discuss some point today those other projects. Additionally, I wanted to try to talk to you a little bit about the framework that the CAC developed at the time on June 26th when we approved a 0.6% plan. The projects that were listed had not been cut down to the budget that would be necessary to meet the other requirements of that. So we'll discuss that today and look at what the impacts of additional cuts beyond even those that we've been discussing here and with the TMC, see what those impacts will be in order for us to then put together an entire plan that we can vote on, that we can look for consensus. As we do that, though, one of the things I would like to introduce to folks is the possibility of modifications of one or more of the project scopes and how those might also impact the projects that would end up on our list. For me, one of the keys is the Colossal Cave project, and we'll discuss that one in some detail. I've talked with Carmine about that project and know that the county is assessing it. Also spoke to Director Sanfredio of Tucson DOT and Mobility, and understand that they're kind of doing the same thing. Encouraging the two to talk together since it is a joint project the way us, and I hope that we can come up with some ideas today, at least as placeholders that will allow us to move forward either with or without that project or in some other form than it may currently have. And then finally, or on my list of things that I want to make sure we do today is to go over some different options that have been provided to us that have been developed by committee members. I'll show you one possibility for reaching the $980 million threshold, if you will, for projects that you're not familiar with it. It'll be better if I'm ever able to get the information over to Crystal to do that. But in the meantime, I can talk to you about it certainly, and it's pretty straightforward. Essentially, in order to, well, we'll get to it. Sorry, I've got a lot on my mind today, as you can tell, and don't want to just dump it out on the table. But how about if we start by having a quick recap of the committee meeting with the TMC and those projects that were debated at that time.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, the ones that you're talking about below the line were projects that were based on the CAC rank.
Thank you. Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
You might have said that, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. And so then it was added up to the 1.1. So obviously, since the cost estimates came in higher, then there were a few projects underneath that. And those are the projects where it was at the TMC ad hoc. We started with to see if there was any agreement that those were could go on a reserve list.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone, we did two exercises as a committee. One, to select projects to continue, and the other was to rank all the projects. The two exercises turned out to be grossly different and really not as comparable as the idiot who proposed them thought they might be. But in any case, they are kind of a starting point as that same idiot kept saying. So when we talked to the TMC, we showed them that ranking order and some of the projects that drop below the line. We received good feedback about the importance of those projects. And I think we can talk about that now. I will mention, though, that at that meeting, Brian Keeley, among others, shared the philosophy that he had in creating his own rankings. And I think those are really smart and something that we should really consider here as we go through this. And as you do, you'll notice that some of these projects that were defended at the TMC would more than likely become above the line projects, whereas some of the others, which had a fair ranking, but perhaps in the other exercise didn't, excuse me, didn't make it above the line, or didn't make it, didn't end up below the line, may well go there again. So in any case, the projects that were talked about were the Ina Road project for the town of Marana, and the town at that meeting indicated that if a project would have to be dropped, that that would be the third priority of the town, and that they were actively looking for other ways to perhaps fund it, including the use of some of the categoricals, so that portions of the work that may be seen in a full project for Ina Road might be dealt with some of the more specific improvements to active transportation or safety related improvements. So that was Ina Road. The Tangerine traffic interchange, which is the town of Marana's priority, was also discussed. The large amount of development on the east side that's coming in the fairly near future, including several distribution centers, plus platted or planned residential development, are big pushes so that the Tangerine traffic interchange doesn't, within a couple of years, resemble the current Cortero Farms or the Cortero Road traffic interchange, which is clearly the #1 priority for that part of the region. So additionally, we discussed the State Route 210 project. As you recall, we had 3 SR 210 projects presented to us. 2 of them were combined to make a single one, and then the third one in second. So 2 of those showed up. One of them we ranked above the line, the other below, and the point was made in the meeting that to complete the State Route 210, we would need to do both of those projects, and connection to the interstate clearly would be very much an important aspect or an important part of that corridor project. Next, we talked about the town of Sarita's Pima Mine Road. That's the second priority for that community, and it helps. Since we don't have any specific projects listed for the Tohono O'odham, we recognize that this one, which helps really alleviate congestion and access problems to their Desert Diamond facility. This would be a really good project both for them and certainly for the rest of the community.
Sorry. Did we get specific feedback from the Tohono O'odham about if we asked them if that would be a good thing? I mean, I assume it is, but.
I did not, but the impression I got from the TMC discussion was that they had somehow confirmed that that was an important project for them, or that it provided benefit to them, and they recognized it. I don't know. Do you know?
Yeah, I'd be
anything
happy
about
to add to that. That project has been discussed with Town of Sarita and the San Javier District and the Tohono O'odham for many years. They've been collaborating together to make sure they can improve that entire corridor. They've done the bridge widening, they've done some pedestrian improvements, signal improvements. So it has been discussed in various settings, and I believe if there was anybody at the table from Tohono O'odham Nation, they would agree that it would be their priority as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Farhad. We also discussed the Thornydale Road project, which is Pima County's third priority. And there were a lot of folks that chimed in about this project and the fact that it's truly a regional project, that it is maybe first and foremost a safety project. Mountain View High School has been, and near there on Thornydale has been the scene of a number of tragic and dangerous collisions and problems. And as a result, this is really kind of also a project that completes a corridor. I don't know if anything I missed from that, Carmine.
I think those are the key points. I mean, the roadway's already over capacity, over 2.5 decades long discussion about improvement of that roadway. So there have not been sufficient funds available to complete that. I think the points you made about the presence of the high school, the need in that area for amenities for bicycling and pedestrian movement. So there's a number of factors that resulted in that suggestion that be added back in.
Thank you. And then the last project that we specifically discussed was the Shannon Road project, Oro Valley's #1 priority. Some conversation was had about its geographic proximity to the Thornydale project, but it was pointed out that it's a school project, or that there's at least one, I think maybe 2 schools on that segment that create real safety issues, and that although it's on the the western edge of Oro Valley, it is really a regional project in that it benefits both Pima County and Marana and the rest of that part of the region. So that was a project where we also recognize that it's a top priority project for the town of Oro Valley. And as such, deserves perhaps to be reconsidered by this group. So we looked at all those. You'll recall that there are also a number of projects from the city of Tucson, the modernization projects that are down in that area. And might be a good time. Is Brian online? Brian, it might be a good time for you to remind us of the process that you utilized and that I think several of us have been kind of recognizing was a good one for how to create, if you will, a ranking process or a ranking list. Would you mind sharing that with us quickly?
Absolutely. Just confirm, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Okay. So two things just briefly to take away. Yes, a lot of the projects that the CAC ranked below the line, the individual jurisdictions came back and made note that those projects were important to them and frankly more important than some of the projects we had put above the line. Additionally, the city of Tucson in that meeting presented I don't want to necessarily call it new framework. I don't know what the right description is, but they came in and stated that transit was their number one priority. And they ranked transit significantly above roadway projects. So my logic the first time I ranked these and continues to be that the individual jurisdictions, they know their needs perhaps better than we do. That doesn't take away our responsibility, but I give a lot of credence and credit to the jurisdictions who have the experts and the foresight to predict what they need in their jurisdictions. So what I have done is I went through the sponsor priorities and I listed all their number ones in order first. And then when you do that, that encompasses every jurisdiction that we currently have. Then I went to the number twos. Once you get to the number twos, a couple drop off. For example, South Tucson and Pascua Yaqui only had one project on the list. So there are fewer number twos than there are number ones. And then I just continued to do that. I went through, list all the number threes in order. Once you get through the threes, all the jurisdictions or the Marana and Oro Valley drop off after that, and then so on and so forth. The fours, the fives, the six, and from 4 down, it's just Tucson and Pima County projects left. So in that ranking, it allows for all the jurisdictions to be represented. It allows for their highest priorities to be presented. And you don't, I think we'll go through it a little later, Tom, or whatever you want, but you don't, when projects start falling off, they're the lowest priority projects per the jurisdictions for Pima County and Tucson, who have the most projects on the list.
Okay, good. Thank you. Just as a point of summary, I guess, we do have those priorities provided to us from the city as well as the other jurisdictions. Sorry, just having a few technical issues on this end. The projects that we end up prioritizing obviously are important because at some point we have to draw the line because we know that there's much more many more projects than there is money to pay for them, regardless of where we land as far as our budget. We'd frankly be essentially using all the money from RTA Next in order to build all of those projects. So knowing exactly where priorities were, and also accepting the reality that the small jurisdictions have already trimmed their project lists considerably. They are typically just one or two, or in the case of Marana with those ADOT project, traffic interchanges, 3 projects, whereas if you go down through this process that was just described by Brian, you will end up with all of the highest priority projects, certainly for all the jurisdictions. And as I said, regardless of what you use for the bottom line budget. Abby, do you have a question?
I mean, I used a very different method, and so I was going to comment on that, but if that's not appropriate now, I don't need to.
Go ahead.
So I appreciate hearing that from you, Brian. I think if we're just, I completely agree with you that the jurisdictions know their own priority projects more than we do. I just was viewing this from the perspective that this is a regional project, and not all the jurisdictions projects have a regional scope, and we still haven't defined what that means. And I think that that is a problem going forward for us. I think it's going to be a problem for the voters that we still don't know what that means. So I did not just put down everybody's first rankings. I mean, I think if we did that, there'd be no point to having a CAC. We don't need to do that if that's just how this is working. I was also concerned that a number of the projects did not conform to our our guiding principles. So I looked back through our guiding principles at some of these projects, and I really appreciated hearing from these gentlemen, because I think that we don't always think about things like pedestrian safety and bike safety in small local areas and how that connects to everything else. The great thing about those sorts of projects is those tend to be the cheaper projects. So even if they're lower priority, we can get more in. So I looked at this from a regional scope, and I looked at this from our guiding principles. I looked at it from a safety scope, and I looked at it from an equity scope. And the rankings that we got again for this round are completely different than the ones that I've submitted each time we've done this exercise. So I think we still need a definition of what regional means. And also the understanding that some of these projects that some of these jurisdictions want may end up getting built, but maybe not with RTA dollars, if they're not regional. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay. And I think that was one of the main points really that was made at the TMC, the need for regionality in the whole plan, not just in the projects themselves, because they are a big part, obviously, of the plan, but also in choosing any named projects that might be put into either transit or active transportation. We remember the 2 projects that the city of Tucson rescoped in order to have them be more properly described, let's say, as active transportation and safety. And as a result, I think more and more of those projects are likely. I am hopeful that when the county and the Green Valley folks get together, they'll recognize that a number of the important projects there really are ideal for those categories, those elements of active transportation and safety. They're exactly the kinds of projects that we've described as being needed, and perhaps some of those can actually be named so that voters will recognize that they're committed.
And then Jamie and then Brian.
Okay, go ahead, Ed.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to Brian for that report. I thought it was a very pragmatic regional approach. I hadn't heard that for a while here in this meeting, so I really appreciate the homework and the hard work that he put into it. I thought I had a greater good perspective. I think when it comes to these smaller jurisdictions, they deserve to be heard. They too vote, so it'd be nice if we took that regional approach and made sure they had a piece of this pie as well. Again, this is the Regional Transportation Authority, so I just wanted to say thank you to Brian for that report.
So, yeah, this is Jamie. I took somewhat the same approach as Brian. I think, we can argue all day. We have been for 5 years what regional is, and I think I'm done arguing about what's regional is and isn't. So, but if we look at it, I mean, at the end of the day, our recommendation has to be approved by the RTA board. And that board is made up of the elected officials from these different regions in our greater Tucson area. I think this is just a common sense way to go. I think to Abby's point, this kind of gives us a ranking, but then as a committee, we still can kind of look at that and see, does that really make sense? So I think it's a starting point. I think we still got to bring some heart and soul into this plan to make sure everybody's covered and all those regions of throughout the county are covered. Not that it's cronyism or gerrymandering or anything like that. We're just trying to get as many people as possible to vote for this. And I think everybody, at the end of the day, everybody's going to want something, right? And I think this does it very well. Just to look, when we look at this based upon the public comment we got this morning, number of these provide, some gentleman mentioned 3%. I don't think that number is accurate because when you look at these, a number of these projects, specifically in South Central Pima County, include bicycle pedestrian enhancements. So I think if we look at this, this kind of addresses the needs of the region. And I don't know if I don't want to make an motion, but I think this would be a really great starting point, or maybe adopt this framework and prioritization, and just to keep this thing moving. Tom said in the beginning of the meeting, we have 2 more meetings after this. So it's time to produce something. I think everybody's had time to go through the process, but now it's time for results. So.
Dale.
I somewhat support what Jamie's saying, but I also think that we need to have, I assume here on this line here that basically is that hard line where the project cuts.
If you look at
Actually, if you don't mind,
yeah, that's a problem.
Let's have Brian walk through it again now that we have it up, if you don't mind.
Yeah, there's another one I would prefer to put up there, but let's go ahead. Unfortunately, the formula in item D didn't change, but that line there is the $1.12 billion line.
So we're actually going to take a couple projects more up, right?
If we go to 980, yes. One of the things I wanted to put on the table is the Colossal Cave Road project. We've debated it a couple of meetings now, and I think one of the possibilities for this project, besides breaking it into phases, have been a couple of other discussions. And Sam Credio from the city is here, and Carmine and Preps, we can call on both of them to make a comment about this. But when I took a look at possibilities for drawing a line at the 980 million, which is what's actually left over, the CAC June 26th proposal included approximately $980 million exactly worth of projects that proposed to be constructed. So one of the things that I had looked at with Colossal Cave was the difficulty of it, the high expense of it, and perhaps even discussion about beginning and ending points. And since a small part of it is in the city and the majority in the county, and the city has talked about some other options for that. I looked at what it would take to help us still get 22 projects above the line and still break that, hit that 980. And it would result in the Colossal Cave Road being reduced to $83 million. Now, maybe Sam, you could join us, talk about not just this one, but your overall priorities and the information that you provided to the committee.
Right, still morning. So good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. At the TMC ad hoc meeting, I guess it's been a couple Fridays ago, the city of Tucson did share a holistically prioritized project list. Hopefully you all have received a copy of that. I did transmit a former letter and our project list to the RTA last week. And I was indicated, there we go, they just brought it up on the screen there. So the letter essentially walks you through our approach to this prioritized project list. So I won't go into great detail. I'll just give you the high level view, and then I can get back to Tom's question about Colossal Cave. So essentially what the city's done is we prioritize all of our community needs onto one project list. I think I heard one member of the committee mention that the city prioritized transit service as our highest priority. That is correct. You'll see that it's prioritized beginning with the continuation of existing transit service that the RTA is currently paying for. We did include some new transit service based on recommendations we heard from through the comprehensive operational analysis, COA process. And then further going down the list, we included a category called pedestrian and bicycle safety and walkability improvements, in which we provided a list of projects that represent about half of the investment for that category. We do also have a category for traffic signal technology upgrades. Again, I think I presented to you all on this previously. This category actually represents upgrading all the traffic signals within the city limits. Actually covers half of the traffic signals because the other half are being covered under the investment made by Proposition 411. Tucson delivers better streets, safe streets. I guess the wild card that we included here is our pavement rehabilitation category. The city continues to maintain that that road rehabilitation should be included as part of RTA Next. What you'll see is that we've listed the federally classified principal arterial streets. These are streets that carry the highest traffic volumes in our city. Also, some of these streets either begin or end outside the city limits. We went ahead and bolded those roadways that do have RTA 1 projects encompassed in them. And then after that, you'll see that we have all of our location-specific projects that are most familiar to you all. There are a few that are new that we've added to the list. One in particular I want to point out is that we do have our Oracle Stone Bus Rapid Transit Project, high capacity transit project, back on the list here at $70 million. And then we also have Marianne Cleveland Way, which is a widening project, widened a 4-lane divided roadway that is from Houghton Road to the city limits. In looking at either Marianne Cleveland Way or Colossal Cave, on Colossal Cave, we really deferred to the county on that project because we know that that project is mostly within the county limits, and there's just a small piece within the city limits. Our priority would be Mary Ann Cleveland Way, from Houghton to the city limits, just because of the growth that we've seen on the southeast side. That is one of our very few widening projects on the list. And then lastly, a couple other items I want to mention is that we did include our share of the administrative costs. You'll see in that green tinted row. And then you'll see a dollar amount of $1.37 billion. And what that number represents is roughly 65% of the entire investment in RTA Next, based on the $2.34 billion budget that the RTA board has approved. It also takes out the deferred projects, the $230 million of deferred projects. The reason why we used that number is just being able to have a target investment so that we could prioritize our list. Now, we did include projects below the line, and what we view these are alternate projects that if revenues were to come in greater than what we are proposing, that we have additional projects ready to go. And we do think that that could be a strategy to get other projects included in the plan, but having the flexibility that once those hopefully those revenues will come in higher, that we have a way to allocate that funding. And again, I went in pretty great detail in the letter that I sent over to both the TMC and the CAC. And Tom, I'm happy to answer any questions on this, or we can talk more about Mary Ann Cleveland Way if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Let me ask if Carmine wants to add anything about Colossal Cave at this point.
Tom, I would just note that the county has heard the discussion that's happening and the input that's coming from the CAC, given the city's latest transmittal of information. We're taking a look at all of our projects, Colossal Cave included. So we want to make sure that those priorities previously assigned to those are still the priorities. And so that, we will have an update here in, probably the upcoming week or 2 weeks. We recognize that there are areas throughout the county that are underrepresented in terms of projects. And so, looking at those opportunities to introduce, whether it's bicycle or pedestrian improvements, right, focusing on the non-roadway categorical elements. So if there's some adjusting that can be made to the county's named roadway project lists, and then alternatively offering things that would fall more in the active transportation category or the safety category, we want to, attempt to do that. So we'll stay at that work and continue to coordinate with the city of Tucson, particularly around Colossal Cave and Mary Ann Cleveland Way, and come back with some input that hopefully is useful to the discussion.
Quick question for Sam. Did you have a cost estimate for the Mac Way from, where was it, from Colossal Cave to where?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So our Mac Way project, Mary Ann Cleveland Way, is from Houghton to the city limits. And that is widened to a 4-lane divided roadway with turn lanes, and we are estimating $50 million for that portion.
50.
That's correct.
Do we know about where the city limits is? Okay.
It is just west of Cienega High School.
Okay, how far is that from? Is there anything improved from that point east?
I believe it's all.
Back to 2 lanes.
Yeah, it would be transitioning back to 2 lanes. I do know that in an earlier iteration, and I'll defer to Carmine to mention this, there was a county project to also improve Mary Ann Cleveland Way from the city limit east and all.
Yeah, that's correct. And so as part of the discussion that took place, that was deferred to then Colossal Cave. And so, right, I think there's a lot of value to looking at corridors right through the multiple jurisdictions. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well. And I can't tell you what, we'll land on, but it's right. Colossal Cave, do you modify Colossal Cave? Do you shift off of Colossal Cave entirely and include the segment of Mary Ann Cleveland? in the unincorporated area connecting to the proposed improvements that the city is suggesting. We have to come up with essentially a plan for what we think is the highest value project in that area.
Very good, thanks. We have Edmund online with a question.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I don't have my hand up. Sorry.
Okay. Next is Brian and then Moss.
Yeah, Tom, two things. That spreadsheet you shared, just for the record, I know there's an updated one that's a little cleaner. I just emailed it to Julie. I don't know if she's able to present it or not. But after hearing from the city of Tucson and while we're speaking about the Mary Ann Cleveland project, would you like me to go through the 4 options at this time or hold that till later?
You better hold it until later. I don't have it up on the computer yet, but
Okay.
We'll do that soon.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Moss.
Thank you. And again, Brian, just want to express my gratitude for you kind of knuckling down and pulling together a spreadsheet, and is really helpful to chat with you the other day through some of our concerns. I just appreciate you being at the table and working to get something good for our region. And thank you to the folks who came out and spoke. I don't know if they're still in the room or not, but I just kind of listening to those comments, I just wanted to kind of, they really resonated with a lot of things that I've heard from regional residents about, what are they demanding when it comes to roads and pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. And it's not just this idea that I think a lot of these projects, do, which is essentially just bringing the roads up to code, putting a sidewalk in when they should have been there a long, long, long time ago. That's like brushing your teeth, right? It's not meeting what the demand is, which is to earnestly invest in these alternate modes to ensure that they're truly viable options for people to get around and get around safely. So, I say that because I've heard this argument brought up before that, when the named projects are widening from 4 to 6 lanes, and then but they're also adding in, bike lanes and sidewalks. That doesn't actually necessarily mean we're making the roads safer. And I think we see that already, even, with examples like Broadway. I don't think I've heard anybody say, wow, I feel safer now that it's been widened through the RTA1 biking on this. And in fact, like, it's an area that I would 100% avoid on my bike because of the overall design of the road. We've had many discussions about that. So I just want us to really not conflate that just because there is a presence of a bike lane that makes it safe and is a good investment that is really ticking the box of what the categoricals are really intending to do in those goals. That's one piece. And then Abby, I just appreciate your comments about regionality. Chris, I know you've been a great reminder, you've done a great job of reminding our committee about that regionality definition. And where I'm at kind of with these projects is I really want the TMC. I want the jurisdictions to actually, come together and say what is a regional project. I think that we're kind of put into a bad position from the start because everybody just looked across their individual plans, it seems, and said, this is a project we want. This is a project we want. We don't know when we're going to fund it, rather than saying, like, city and, Oro Valley, for example, saying, hey, can we collaborate on a project and like produce something together? I think like that would have been a far better approach, 5 years ago, to come to the table and would have made a lot of this easier and really more in the spirit of what this plan is supposed to be. And so why I'm bringing that up is that I think when we are also talking about, jurisdictions cutting down to the bone of having two projects or not, I still think that there's really important context that we need to keep in mind, that these jurisdictions are getting, represent maybe 5% of the entire region's population, so even fewer voters, and are in some cases getting 18% of the budget for named roadway projects. And so when you're balancing it out in that way, it's why I, it's more nuanced than just kind of just cutting things straight across, and I think it's a really good approach to start. And then this is where where that dance is going to come into play. And Tom, I, appreciate the proposals of trimming project scopes. And I think that we should continue to ask for that from the TMC. And, like, for example, there's some projects that have larger budgets than entire categoricals. So just trying to think about what we really need to have come out of the RTA versus what jurisdictions can, can produce themselves is really important. Whether that's through matching funds or rescoping, all of those types of things. So a lot in there.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Appreciate Brian, your work, and looking forward to moving forward.
All right. Thanks, Moss. We have Bruce. Bruce, I apologize. You had your hand up a long time ago and I completely spaced it. Also, if we have any questions for Sam, I know that he has to get out of here in the next 10 or so minutes. Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I basically like the approach that Brian and Jamie have put on the table, is to give deference to the jurisdictions. I think those are the professionals. I've said this all along. I think they understand what the greatest need is. I don't think doing that is necessarily inconsistent with the rankings and the analysis that we did, because most of our projects that we're dealing with were ones and twos. And as a consequence, I think that they are objectively defensible. I also hold the view that I'm pretty confident revenues are going to come in above the baseline. And I think that's going to give us ample opportunity to go down further in the list, very much as the city of Tucson's proposed in their project. With respect to Colossal Cave, I just make a couple observations. First of all, the Marianne Cleveland improvements the city's proposing only are a small portion of Marianne Cleveland Way. It only take it part of the way down that roadway. The Colossal Cave improvements are significant, but that region is the least represented and protected in this process. And that may very much change tomorrow when we may have a new jurisdiction at the table arguing for that. I think the issue there is to provide some flexibility in how much money is allocated and how that process can work. Because I do think if Vail is incorporated, it's going to want to come to the table at the RTA and at PEG and make its wishes known with respect to those roadway improvements out there. I don't know how we do that under the election laws, and maybe the RTA board will have to provide that flexibility when it takes something to the ballot. But I do hope that that community will be given consideration as we move forward.
A lot to chew on there. Jamie, excuse me, Jamie and then Dale.
All right, this is Jamie. I just wanted to echo some of Bruce's comments. There's an election tomorrow. There may be a new, you have to widen the table at the PAG and the RTA board. So I think that's something we can, I think the big thing is, I just watched on the news this morning how Marana is really advocating for the improvement in Curtail Farms because it's got to where it's untenable. And I know they just had another railroad death there versus pedestrian. So I think we have the same thing going on in Vail with the whole Colossal Cave. That intersection is jammed up by two schools, by the trains that are 69 trains a day that are 2.5 miles long. You look at the proposed developments in that area along there right now, there's state lands transitioning to a 2,000 acre proposed battery factory. That's going to impact that intersection. We're already seeing in rush hour where the freeway is backed up and because of that intersection is so heavily used because there's people there. The need is there. It's not like we can turn the need away. you can't really ride your bicycle from Vail to downtown Tucson. One of the proposals I saw, they want to eliminate the express service from that area. So I think the newly formed Vail, or potentially formed, the railroad goes right down the middle. It intersects the whole community. If they want to have any kind of continuity, they need to solve it. And I'll put my emergency responder hat on. It's not simply like Curtera Road, where you go down a mile to Ina or go up a mile to Twin Peaks. It's 4 miles that you have to go all the way up to Houghton, go a mile north, and then 4 miles back. That's 10 miles out of your way, roughly. I know the math adds up to 9, but it really comes out to be 10. So 10 miles, that's a long time to wait for an ambulance when you're having a heart attack. And so I guess, I think just because it's expensive should not be means to eliminate it. Maybe there's alternatives that I'm hoping the traffic engineers have come up with, so we don't destroy the integrity of the community, and so that we can still do something about those traffic feeds. As far as Marianne Cleveland, right now there's 2 housing subdivisions off of it, and they have a traffic light in, but it's all completely surrounded by state land. There's not development there today, but there is development that is occurring, throughout that entire region, which thousands and thousands of homes. That's really their only outlet to get out. The only reason there is some traffic on Marion Cleveland because of the bottlenecks with the train system. So I guess I'm going to implore or ask this committee to not just throw it out because it's easy mark. Maybe there's ways around it. Maybe there's something else to be done, but that is a real bottleneck and a real problem for our community. And talking to people, we want to get through there. We don't want to destroy our community. We want to maintain our 2 historic buildings there. So it's not an easy challenge, but this is America. We solve tough problems. So.
All right, Dale.
Yes, Sam, before you have to go, I want to correlate how this correlates to the projects that we're talking about. And basically what I see is that a series of the projects that are fairly well ranked, and even though 5 or 6, Drexel makes up 4 of the first 6, I think. But how do you see these projects relating to the roadway projects as defined now, as we've been working with for a period of time? And I assume the bottom line down here is what it would be those roadway projects, and you don't expect a lot of funding on those, but you are looking specifically for the safety elements. Do you think that money would be coming from the safety elements, or do you think that would be something that should be specific project?
Mr. Chair, Dale, let me see if I can answer your question. So the list in front of you is the city's holistic prioritization of all of the needs of our community. The location-specific projects are very closely related to the multimodal corridor element that you all are debating today. The projects on this list, I'd say, are about 90% similar to the projects on the multimodal corridor element list. However, we did introduce some new projects that hadn't previously been discussed. I mentioned the HCT project. We did bring back the Marianne Cleveland Way project. And then you'll see a couple of Greenway projects. And again, what these represent, Dale, are the city's prioritization for these projects. But in the context of the greater community needs, this is where all of that investment in the city, we would prioritize. The dollar amounts you see here are either based on the cost estimates that we received from the RTA on the existing projects, or our best estimate of the cost estimates based on what we know today. I do want to point out too that on the right-hand side of the spreadsheet, there are 5 columns. And what we did there is those are the RTA next categorical elements. And so we've checked those boxes that we believe they fall within those categorical elements. However, we did not break out the funding by that. We just simply provided a crosswalk to show you where those projects might fall within those categorical elements. And then the total dollar amount, the 1.37 billion in red there, that is the total of all the projects, beginning with project number 1 and transit service all the way through the location specific projects. So that's in totality what all of those projects add up to. Did I answer your question, Dale?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
One last question. This is kind of a radically different prioritization. We had been looking at it. Does the city of Tucson have any opinion about the recategorization that's being talked about here today?
Well, I think it is a different approach. So far the approach has been rather linear in that we first figure out what is the dollar amount for the corridor elements. And then we have the dollar amounts already set aside for the other buckets. And once we, at least at the TMC, once we got through trying to prioritize those named roadway projects and moving on to the categorical elements, excuse me. What we've done here is take a more holistic approach and say, you know what, these are our needs as a city across the board. I think where there's a little bit, probably the biggest deviation is the pavement rehabilitation. And that, again, I think that bears some conversation because there are no funds for pavement in the region. HERF continues to decline. And other than the communities have been successful, like the city, in finding some sales tax revenue to pave the local roads, there's really nothing for the arterials. And so that's why we think there should be a conversation around that. Beyond that, again, we did try to provide the correlation on our categories here with those already being proposed for RTA Next.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple other comments on Marianne Cleveland Way. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you know. I think the primary issue is the Colossal Dave Road and that. But as a practical matter, you need to understand that there are a couple subdivisions that are actually county subdivisions, but their only access is Marianne Cleveland Way. And if you sit at those, I have family that lives in one of those subdivisions, and you can sit there a good long while trying to get a break from the traffic on Marianne Cleveland Way so they can turn onto Marianne Cleveland Way. And that's those neighborhoods only access. With that said, I still want to say that my issue with the Vail project has been always the amount of cost and if there's a reasonable way to reduce that cost. And I still feel that there needs to be a project out there. The other thing that I'd like to say, and this comes down to the roadway projects and the idea of a deferred list. I think the deferred list is a good idea, and I think things that don't make it should be on a deferred list, and I agree with a lot of that. But I also want to say what the reality of a deferred list is. And I'm going to take that from my own experience as working with the sales tax at the city and dealing with the collection of the sales tax. You're not going to think about that deferred list, and you're not going to have an idea what those projects are going to be. And so anything you're putting on that list, you're thinking that list is 20 years out, and probably after 20 years out, because you're going to collect the money, and then you're going to want to have all of the projects that are in there finished before you even start looking at that list. For instance, under Prop 101 with the city, we are in the position that we know we've collected more money than we expected, but we still have projects that are undone. And until those projects are finished, we're not going to release that money to go on to any other projects, because as everybody knows, you get surprises as you build things. And so that deferred list is a great idea. I think it needs to be there, but I think we need to keep it in perspective as to what it is. Something that we're talking about 20 or 25 years.
Fine, thank you. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, I just I'd like a little better explanation. Where did the 65% come from?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, our letter does provide a little bit more specificity on that. That has been our observation of sales tax collection in the region over the last several years. It's just an approximate number that we used as to develop a target investment, so that way we could prioritize our list to a specific dollar amount.
So the 65% is what Tucson collects of the total. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you consider the future growth patterns and how much that will change? Because if you look at the RMAP study, the primary growth in this area is going to be in the outlying regions like Marana and Sorita and Green Valley and Oro Valley. Did you look at how that would modify that percentage?
We have not looked at that yet. We are in the process of commissioning a study to better understand what the sales tax collection forecasts would look like over the 20-year horizon. And so we're hoping just after the first of the year, we'll have better data to answer some of those questions.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, have you calculated what percentage of that money is generated by county residents spending in the city? I live at River Road in Craycroft, and I would say 90% of my sales tax revenues are generated in the city, not in the county. So when you suggest that sales tax revenue is 60% of the city generated, I think that's a little bit misleading.
Yeah, thank you. That's an excellent point. And no, we did not go to that level of detail. And really what you're talking about is, tax generation versus tax origination. We again, just used a broad stroke to have a number that we could calculate our priorities to. I think, as I mentioned during the ad hoc TMC meeting, is to not get so hung up on the 65%, but rather just understand that these represent the city's priorities collectively, all in one place. And again, we just needed a number to be able to calculate to.
Yeah, just kind of the counter argument that's often made to what Bruce just put forward is that those county residents have to drive on those city streets in order to get to that place of business, and therefore, paying for those roads is appropriate. And it also, those 2 points bring out the reason that we're not going to be talking about the percentages that the individual jurisdictions may receive. We'll look at things like, have we covered the whole region? Have we gotten the most important projects funded? And, are there adequate numbers of projects that are being provided to various parts of the region? But I think it's probably a good point. Brian, I know we're going to lose Sam here in a minute.
Mine isn't for Sam, so go
okay.
ahead.
Do you have something for Sam, or can I?
I do.
Do something else right
I have something for Sam. So Tom.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay, go ahead, Mon.
Sam, I would be wondering if the city could break out the budgets for a given project across the different categoricals. This is something that I've been noodling on a lot about, is, because I think this matrix really lays it out well, that there are some cases that are very specifically, is it safety or is it active mode? And I wonder if that's could be a solution too, to help us have our cake and eat it too, in that if we shuffle some dollars out of the roadway projects from the city that I think are a bit more holistic than other projects, that maybe that could help to ease that budget strain and hard decisions that might need to be made, and move that into some of the other safety or into some of the other categoricals. I also think that could help relieve some heartburn that I hear from regional residents about how in RTA 1 funds were, swept from the categoricals to help fund named projects. And so helping to ensure that that investment happens in the next 20-year plan as intended by the voters, rather than kind of getting lost in the named projects. So I would be very curious to understand how that breaks out and if that helps us. And I think it would be specifically like what could be funded through, the safety element for X project that, isn't contingent on, some deferred project list, or, you know what I mean? Just trying to be like, what could realistically be funded and delivered on that, but also help to kind of meet these elements of the project that the city is proposing.
Us, maybe another way to ask the question is, if you could show us your period one priorities as far as those projects, we could consider naming those within the safety element. I don't think it's appropriate for the committee to consider that all of these should go on a ballot as named projects. Certainly not when it could take half of the entire safety element. I think is the number that you used before. So having some of those for the initial part is important, but it's also very important as priorities change throughout the life of the program for there to be that flexibility for the board to authorize those projects which may be needed and which come from other of the jurisdictions.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Moss. So a couple things here is the projects in that safety element, the pedestrian and bicycle safety and walkability. We do have scopes and project cost estimates that we could more clearly delineate. And in fact, we are doing that. And within that category itself, actually ranking those specific projects. I think our goal here is we were trying to balance providing enough specificity to the voters while also providing flexibility for the future. I think that if that category were to be pared down, we could contract that those projects down to a more prioritized project list. Relative to the location-specific projects, we did not break them out dollar-wise by the various categorical elements. I'm certain that with a little bit of time, we probably could pull out some of those elements that would fall under the other categorical elements in terms of dollar amounts, similar to how we did with 22nd Street in La Cholla in the previous exercise. For this prioritized project list, we've not done that level of detailed work yet. But if that was something the committee needed, I'm sure that we could provide some sort of feedback in that regard.
Thank you.
So this is prioritized, just not prioritized by period. Is that what you're talking about?
That's correct. We did not put period of delivery on this project list.
But they are prioritized.
They are prioritized. So yeah, for example, if we only get to project number 20, then 21 through 26 are our lowest priority. Those fall below the line. Yep. And that was the idea of this list, is that basically as that dollar amount were to move up, if those projects are below the line, there's really no discussion on which ones are the city's priorities. We're laying this out for you here right now. And I should have mentioned that this prioritized list is based on a few different things. Feedback we've heard from all of you, because some of these projects were ranked previously in a previous exercise. Feedback that we got through our Move Tucson Mobility Master Plan project, and as well as feedback from our elected officials, mayor and council.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate you sticking around and cutting into your day.
My pleasure. Thank you all for having me.
Make it quick.
There's time for one quick
Yeah, go
question,
for it.
which you may or may not know. I just happened to notice that the Midvale Park, the Cayce, Santa Cruz, the new river or the new bridge over the Santa Cruz River project, you had I think a funding need of 8 million, and on here it has 20 million. I think the grant was already covered in here. They're non-RTA funded. So I was wondering, did you guys come up with more non-RTA funding, or the cost estimate coming different? Like I said, you may not know offhand, so
Yeah,
it's okay.
are you talking, Kevin? Are you talking about Drexel Road, Midvale to Sky Santa Cruz?
Yeah, number 10 there.
Yep. That is yeah. So we have state funding for that project, and to the tune of $15 million. That is the shortfall that we're projecting right now for that project. And we're going to continue to seek other sources to meet that shortfall, to include a potential raise grant. So that is one that dollar amount could probably drop if we're able to bring in other funding sources. And I think many other jurisdictions are doing the same, is wherever we can find additional non-RTA funding, we're going to certainly do so.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break right now. I'm going to get together with Crystal and get up some of these displays that we've been talking about, and we'll reconvene in 5. Yeah.
Counties.
It'd be nice for you and your certificate. That's how we're gonna do things. Never have.
This is our first break.
I'll tell you later. Drink too much water before we do that. Possible. in my age.
Okay. TMI.
Yeah.
Brian kept raising his hand and kept lowering his hand, so I don't know if he still had anything else to say.
Gonna get to Brian in just a couple minutes here. All right, Crystal, could you put up that framework?
Got it.
Or sorry, Rick. Wanted to set the stage for, you know, a more complete review of our plan as it's developing. I know Carolyn wanted to make a statement too.
Are we reconvening?
Yes.
I'm very loud, so, hey guys, we're starting again. Thank you so much for coming. That's like half volume. I can do so much more than that.
Is that your
Thank
courtroom?
you.
I'll take your
That
word
was my
for it. I
inside
prefer not. to-
Yeah, yeah.
That was my inside voice.
Carolyn, you want to,
Yeah, just, thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just wanted to kind of, try to figure out where exactly we are, and I'm glad you brought this up. So what I hear you saying, and I think what we're trying to do is, the 980 number you came up with is basically the amount that we have for multimodal roadways in our framework, whatever we call it. Which is minus the 1217 minus the deferred roadway projects that we have in there, but it includes I think we have the bus pullouts there too. So what you are attempting to do, and I like it, is try to get our framework and the TMC's framework compatible. So that with the 980, having the road, the corridor cut off at 980, we can hopefully keep those other numbers that we had, which was more for transit, more for safety, more for active transportation, et cetera, and see if somehow we can pull these two together. I mean, we're having a lot of conversations about which road projects, but I think it's really good to have come up with a cutoff that we all agree with, so we can reconcile these two approaches, because we're getting near the end of the process, I think. And I did want to ask Carmine, did you say that the county is going through some similar process that the city did with a holistic look, or you're just working on the Colossal Caves, Marianne, Cleveland, all that?
So we're looking at all of the projects, right, that the county has on the list. And so also recognizing that the distribution of the projects may warrant us taking a look at other, improvements that aren't currently listed. So I don't want to characterize it that, we're starting from the beginning again, but we're taking what we have and we're saying, okay, is this the right mix of stuff? And so just for example, the discussion about which are the named roadway projects in Colossal Cave, are there other project improvements that would be beneficial to serve a broader geographic base in the county than what currently has been listed as those roadway projects? We don't have any projects identified that are safety or active transportation, for example. So it could be that we come back with some additions in those categories of potential projects.
Would you see any of those going the way of what the city did, which was to look at the actual road projects and say, this is more of a not modernization, but more of an active transportation, like they took off La Cholla, 22nd Street, and just shifting them to another category, if it's actually more of an active transportation and like rescoping, or are you talking about brand new projects?
I think it's the range of rescoping, and we've done this before. So all the jurisdictions were asked to go back and look at their named roadway projects. And so we've done that previously, but we're doing it again. And it could be that there's some modification or change in the segments that we're talking about. And again, right, I'll use Colossal Cave as an example. Is there a different cutoff of the segments for Colossal Cave? And then are there other projects that would be more modernization or active transportation or safety related types of projects that would come in? So I don't expect that we're going to come back and we're going to, I don't suspect we're going to come back and say, just take this off altogether. If we're taking something off, we're going to be requesting that other things be considered as additions.
Okay. And
Good, thanks. Can we?
yeah, no, I just had a couple more things and I appreciate that. I hope that, I don't know how long this is going to take you, but or two of ours, because we're almost in December.
I understand that. And so we're trying to do that as quickly as we can without just grabbing at stuff
Yes,
haphazardly.
absolutely. And
So
then,
sorry to keep cutting you, Carolyn, but the perfect example is the request today for consideration of things in the Green Valley area that are pedestrian and cyclist related.
right, exactly. That was my last point, which was we have talked about this for a while, about having some named projects in the other categoricals, not necessarily the whole thing. And that's all. I mean, I don't know where this is all going to be for the rest, but this is a fascinating packet. It's a lot of small projects that they're asking for down there, and it's all bike and ped things. So hopefully that'll be on the website under CAC or wherever they go, because I don't see them. But so I would hope that everybody looks at this, because that's all we've heard from in Green Valley, and we've heard from others about active transportation and certainly the city and safety. So I think we should consider seriously having, 2 or 3 projects at least under all the different categoricals, which we did it before, except for the transit, the one high capacity transit and the multimodal corridors. Anyway, that's all.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's take a look at this spreadsheet, which you've seen before. Just a reminder of where we are with the June 26th, 0.6% budget. And without any details about the multimodal roadways as to what that would be for, or which projects it would be specifically. So our overall budget, $2.34 billion. The admin, debt service, small business assistance, 110 million, sorry. Rick, let's go up. I just want to show something about these projects. You see this, no, the other direction, sorry. Just up or down. Scroll up to go down. Okay. All right. So multimodal projects, $1.217 billion proposed, less 237, let's say, million for those additional or for those deferred projects. That's the new cost estimate, more or less. Leaves $980 million for named corridor projects. The next item, public transit at 691 million represents $181 million more than the 510, which was proposed in the TMC original proposal. So there's 180 there. Next is the active transportation, which was,
I'm sorry, just to remind people, that includes the $70 million regional high capacity transit that the city's asked for that kind of floats around
right,
here and there.
right, but which we, for the last 6 months or so, have not had up in the main project. So it was kind of its home, I think, assumed to be its home.
Yeah.
So the active transportation at 102 is an increase of 12 million from that original framework. Safety at 160 is a $10 million increase. And environment at 60 is a $20 million increase. So you take 12, 10, and 20, and you've got 42 million in round numbers that have been added, plus the 181 million for transit, and we're at, let's just say in round numbers, 220 million that would have to be taken out, if you will, from those roadway projects. We know that this proposal removes the $100 million contingency. We've talked about the justification for that being that we have the pessimistic projection of revenue, and we also have individual project contingencies that have been put in. Farhad has told us numerous times about what that loses as far as flexibility for the future. But I'm just describing what we have here. So you take that 100 million, we're still at about 130 million that would have to come out of the, let's say, the $1.1 billion proposal. And that takes us down to that 980. Just wanted you to, again, have that basic understanding of what we're talking about, what the impacts of increasing each of these categorical elements is. And obviously that money comes from, drawing the line somewhere in the multimodal project ranking. Bruce?
Yeah, so I understand the problem we face, and it seems to me that July 26th framework was a shifting of some of the priorities from roadway projects to transit and other categoricals. And it was based upon the notion of a 6/10 tack rather than a half cent. If we were to reduce that back to the half cent and do that proportionally across each of these categories, it would reflect the same set of priorities that the committee had embraced with July 26th framework. I know that maybe seem overly simplistic, but I mean, we can get very complex here in trying to adjust all these numbers. And that would be my suggested starting point for this discussion.
So essentially, if you consider that to be a 6/10 proposal and you need to go to 5/10, then you take 5/6 of each of those categories.
Right. And that would give us the same set of priorities in terms of percentages and effort in each of the different areas that we had proposed in our general framework at 0.6%.
Have you, by any chance, done that arithmetic?
Only in my head, not on paper.
Right.
Just to clarify here, this budget that was up here as labeled is based on a half-cent sales tax. And I mean, we've gone over this a lot. So this all balances out to the half-cent budget. And really what we're talking about here is the proportionality of the categoricals to all these other areas. And I think it's really important to put it in context, like what we're talking about here, as far as what would be the new investment, so if you were to take what the TMC proposed, or that for transit. That would only, on top of what, in addition to maintaining service, what the TMC is proposing would only create 5 to 6%, leave 5 to 6% of the RTNX budget for any kind of new transit investment. So we're talking little tiny bits, even though it's recognized as this tremendous need. You know, I've heard Jamie, you say you don't have a way to take transit from Vail to downtown or to anywhere else. And that's a big problem. That's a big problem for anybody in Vail who doesn't have, you know, reliable car access or funds to maintain the increasing costs of cars. So that's a huge equity issue, in my opinion. And well, I don't really think it's an opinion, it's just a huge equity issue. Meanwhile, under this framework that we passed, which was with the understanding it would be about half cent, and it was always designed that way, that 13 to 14% of RTA Next dollars could go towards new transit projects, which is, again, in my opinion, not sufficient, you know, and this 30% is also 8% lower than what the Maricopa County Regional Transportation Authority is planning to invest in transit. So we're staying behind. So I just think it's really important to keep things into context. And, you know, that 130 million that we're talking about, that's one project. That could be one roadway project. That's less than one roadway project. And, you know, 2 per roadway projects can make up that difference. And so when we're talking about very small increases of 12 to 10 million just to try to even get something meaningful for these other categoricals, you know, this is an incredibly road heavy plan as it is in that June 26 framework. And we're just trying to get something that would be even palatable to the majority of voters in the region, which have been calling for non-roadway investments, you know.
Thank you. Brian, if you're ready to kind of walk us through the process that you went through and kind of show people where those lines were. I'll have another one to put up after that, and we can start talking about how does this fit into the overall category.
Absolutely. And can we, by chance on that, scroll all the way up to the top to option 1?
Sure.
Okay, so again, all I did was take sponsor priorities and list them. So all the number 1s first, number 2s, number 3s, so on and so forth. Again, this wasn't taking anything away. We've debated a lot of these, but at the TMC, we did hear and had a lot of discussion on why these higher priorities were important to the region. And the different safety elements, multimodal elements that went to it. So in option 1, all I did was I used the 1.12 number and went to determine where the line is. So that black line represents that we would get through the top 6 priorities. And when you get down a little bit lower, that shows that we would bring in a surplus of 8.9 million. I did take in high capacity transit was the goal I was going after to start with. Listening to the city of Tucson and hearing transit was important, as well as this committee talking about, you know, additional transit and high capacity transit being important. So what that ends up doing in option 1 is it still leaves us just shy of $62 million short of high capacity transit. So in option 2, all I did was simply move the line up. So the number 6 projects went away. That means Pima County, Tucson lost a project and Pima County lost a project.
Hey, Brian,
when you go down, yes.
could I clarify or remind everybody of what I think what you had said before? This starts with the TMC framework and says 510 million for transit, 1.12 billion for roadway projects, and the others, I presume, staying the same. Correct?
That is correct.
And then the 70 million would be put into the named corridor projects. the exercise that you're doing here.
Yeah, what I was trying to do was address, again, the city of Tucson came forward and said transit was their number one priority. We've heard that from this committee as well, and that high capacity transit in particular at that 70 million, which the city identified, as well as some people on this committee. That 70 million target was what I was trying to fund through this exercise. What you will see proportionally is the city of Tucson has roadway projects that fall off as we're reallocating more money towards transit, be it specifically high capacity transit or any transit in general, which I believe aligns with what they've stated in their holistic goals. So that was what I was trying to do, while at the same time not taking all of the roadway projects away from the city of Tucson. And as we get deeper into this, you'll see the city of Tucson still benefits greatly in named roadway projects, as well as additional funding towards transit. So this is really just shifting roadway project funding towards transit in alignment with what the city of Tucson stated is their priority, but not taking away from the other jurisdictions to ensure that we have a regional approach to this plan.
Okay, and we're looking at your second iteration here.
So option number 2, when you do it, you will see that there's a 57, almost $58 million surplus, which means high capacity transit is still $12 million in the hole as far as being funded. So we're still short of the 70 million for that. Option 3, I did something a little bit different on this one. So I moved the number 6s back above the line, but what I did was take Tucson's number 5 and put it below the line. The reason for that is number 5 for them is $63 million versus number 6 is 35 million. So it's simply a numbers game. I moved a more expensive project from the city below the line and a less expensive one above the line. And when you scroll down and look at it, now this gets us to where we have fully funded the high capacity transit 7 million and still have a $1.2 million surplus. And continuing on with the conversation that we continue to have around Colossal Cave and Marianne Cleveland, this is keeping that project fully funded as is. We haven't touched that, haven't cut it, haven't done anything. So that project, which we spend a lot of time talking about, is still above the line for both Pima County and Tucson. But then at a request, I took it one step further. So even though high capacity transit's fully funded, I went and cut one more time. So the number 6s again went below the line. So now Pima County has lost their number 6 again, which is the Drexel Road project. But when you go down and look at what that does, high capacity transit is fully funded at $70 million. And there's still a surplus even after that of nearly $51 million. Again, the Vail project still remains. All the other jurisdictions receive all of their projects. Again, some of them, there's very few projects anyways, but they keep them. And really, we've reallocated a lot of Tucson's road projects to transit. I'm trying to align with their request. And this was an attempt to find a compromise, knowing that nobody's going to get everything they want. It allocates more funding towards transit, and yet the outlier jurisdictions did not lose their high priority projects, which they believe is important for them. So that was the extent to which I took this. So it basically, with that surplus of 50 million and funding high capacity transit, it's 1.2 million. No, it's more than $1.2 billion increase in transit, if I did that right. So that was the approach to this. And when you go down and look, the number of projects, Tucson, including the ADOT/Tucson, still has 6 roadway projects. Pima County, Tucson shared that project. That's the Vail one. Pima County still has 4 projects. Marana combined with ADOT is 3. Oro Valley gets there too. Sarita gets there too. Pascua, South Tucson, and the one standalone ADOT project still remain. So as we do talk about proportions, when you look at the city of Tucson, they are getting a significant amount, or the most amount of roadway projects still, the largest investment, plus they're the highest user of transit. And then you go to Pima County and then the smaller. So I do believe to a certain degree it proportions out in alignment with kind of the funding that comes in as well as population. So that's the very quick rundown of what I did. And then we'll turn it over to you, Tom, and I'm available for questions.
All right, thanks, Brian. Chris, could you scroll back to the black line? Scroll back, scroll. Yeah, right there's good. One thing to note here is that the Colossal Cave shows at 157 million. And as Brian mentioned, Tucson's number 5 and 6 were reversed. I thought, oh, that was number 3. Okay, and what's that total number of projects there from 214 up to 203, line 214? Can you count all those all the projects above the line for me? Well, yeah, just how many are there? All right, so there's 21 projects there. All right, could we put up the one that I gave you, option 5?
Mr. Chair, what do those 21 projects add up to?
Double check. Whole bunch of.
Or Brian, do you know?
70 plus.
Yeah, above the black, it comes out to 999 million.
999? For 999. But wait, you have 50 more million for other projects.
We'll send you to it then.
Yeah. And so again, that's 999 above the black line. High capacity transit still funded at 70 million and a nearly $51 million surplus that still remains.
Which can be redistributed to categoricals or roadway projects.
Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
I was just gonna mention, now that you switched the fossil cave to 83 million, I noticed that the city's Irvington project on here is at 40, and they have 63 there. The other numbers generally match what's on there, so I don't know, again, did they come up with more outside funding or something?
I haven't heard anything about
So the working group requested for having that conversation this week, and they're looking at what's different, and so they're going to be discussing that further and provide any additional explanation for the differences.
Yeah, because that's I think that's 23 million. The difference in the Drexel Bridge would be 11 million or 13 million. So I mean that's $33 million.
Yeah.
So if these are real numbers, then that probably gets another project.
Sorry, I forgot that was Rick.
Make it bigger, Rick.
That's
So this is your number 5?
Yeah, this is just one I wanted to show people as to, so Brian showed us how we could get through some. Abby, please don't leave. We lose quorum if you do. Wait for 1 second for me to
I
show
can
this to
wait.
people.
I can be here another 5 minutes. and
Okay,
that's it.
that'll be fine. I just want to show you guys. So Brian starts with the TMC framework. This starts with essentially starts with the CAC framework. There's a change in line 22, which is the Colossal Cave, to 83 million, as I mentioned before. Rick, are you able to pop that note there on
Red thing.
yeah. So this proposes a scope change from the 157 million, perhaps by funding an alignment study, perhaps doing some MAC way improvements instead, or something completely different. As you know, the city and county are both looking at that now. But if we adopt an $83 million budget for that, and then we have the remainder, you can pop out of that now. We get 22 projects out of this at 980 million. And primarily it's because we were able to, because we arbitrarily cut that budget. That doesn't mean that's where I recommend we go. I just wanted to show you kind of what the impacts can be depending on which projects we take. So again, corridor projects, 980 million, deferred projects, 238, safety projects, 160, active 102, environment 60, transit fully funded at 690 or 691. And the admin, as we discussed, gives a 2.34. So that's the impacts that would be seen to go with the CAC framework and try to work back toward the TMC. It doesn't, it kind of helps a little bit, but remember Brian's one is going to actually have a couple more projects if he adopted the $83 million that I did. So, you know, there's going to be a difference, certainly a difference. It'll be more than just a single project. It'll be at least a couple of projects that are lost as a result. So that's just to get a general idea of where we are and perhaps the basis for where a compromise could be struck to get something that this committee can rally around. Bruce?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible to lay those two proposals against each other for us so that we could compare them, you know, on paper and then use that as a starting point for our discussion?
Option 4 and 5.
Mm-hmm. You're kind of asking Crystal.
Well,
is it possible to minimize both of them or shrink them both and put them side by side?
4 and 5.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a question while she's doing that, Mr. Chair. So there's another TMC ad hoc on Wednesday.
Yes.
So would we need to do anything officially to bring that discussion, or those of us that are on the TMC ad hoc, so we can start discussing this with the TMC members?
Well, Brian is also on that working group, and I believe he had intended to share that with the working group as well.
Okay, so we can at least 4 and 5, which
yeah,
we don't need to vote on anything to do. Okay, thank you. Because I know she's got to go.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
We're okay. A couple people logged back in. Thank you, Abby. I appreciate it. And thank you, Mel, for joining and saving our quorum.
I've been here all the time. But as long as could I ask a question within the transit? There's $48 million for neighborhood circulators. And other than Green Valley, I have not heard any support for that. And I'd ask that be looked at, because that's a substantial sum that has a very low ridership and has very little conceptual cause to support its expense.
Let's see.
Mr. Chair, this is Chris Schmaltz. Where are we at on a quorum? If I leave, do we lose?
We're okay on quorum, and I appreciate people staying as long as they can.
Okay, I'm leaving the meeting now.
We'll double check.
Okay.
ask questions? don't
Yeah,
I?
go right ahead.
So I noticed that the paper that Sam handed out has about $443 million for transit. We
Yeah.
take that plus the 70 for HCT, that takes us to 520-ish. What's gonna happen with the other $170 million?
Yeah.
What, I'm sorry, could you ask that question again? What are
So
you
the
looking at?
paper that Sam just handed out today with their priorities for transit has $443 million on it. And then we take the 70 million for the high capacity, add that to the 443, that takes us to what, 513? And on here we have 690, so that's 170, $180 million. That's
So,
I can answer
Mark.
yeah, just one part of the explanation is that the city is showing their own costs.
Yeah.
Even though a significant amount of those costs, particularly in this new transit service, is service beyond the city limits. But the two main items that 190 million of his item 6 covers are weekday, evening, and frequency and area expansion. And so there's a handful of like 8 routes that are covered by it.
So
The other stuff, you know, the neighborhood circulators, as Mel just asked about, and sorry, I don't offhand remember, but there's a couple of others that are outside. Some of the dial-a-ride services.
Okay, so this number isn't necessarily the
Total package.
total
Total
package.
rate.
It's
That's
it's
not-
holistic to the
city's
city of
portion.
Tucson. not the
But it
region.
includes all the SunTran and all the express services and everything else to the other jurisdictions.
No.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just as a reminder, so the RTA portion of transit currently provides roughly 55% of enhancements within the city limits. And the total expenditure was 375. And the proposal to get it up to 510 was additional $140 million for new investments. So what you see here submitted from the city is just within the city limits. So if you want to compare apples and apples, that's currently 55%, but it's proposed to be at roughly 87% now
Proposed by that.
by the city. But what they have shown here is 87%.
Yeah, just to clarify, I maybe, SunTran does operate outside the, you know, and they get paid for that part of the routes by the other governments or by ag.
Yeah. So RTA pays for that, and that's how we get to the 375. And that 140 is on top of 375 for additional enhancements.
Someone just mentioned Express, and those are not covered from my understanding in the city's proposal. So in order to get to a regional number, there's an unknown amount. I've asked the city to clarify that and provide it to us. But just so that I'm able to understand this 87%, we're talking about all transit services by the city of Tucson. Your projection of what those will be to maintain our current level of commitment to transit services.
So currently, the investments within the city limits are 55%. Everything outside of the city limits is included in that additional 45%. So that's the difference that you see here. And the RTA would increase its investments from 55% to 87% within the city. And then you have to figure out what to do with the rest of it.
And I think Mel just said, let's take a close look at those neighborhood circulators. Right, Mel?
Correct.
I think that would be kind of too, you know, what's another place to look at is if the neighborhood circulators are not, you know, yielding a lot of ridership, then there's also actual like harder, you know, infrastructure changes that could be made, you know, to reach up into Oro Valley or Marana or Vale or Green Valley. You know, I think I shared a story. I was at, you know, the annex one night, and some folks who work at the U of A live in Sahuarita, so make that commute, you know, every day of the week. And, you know, like many people have said, are spending their dollars in Tucson. And they were like, I wish that there was a train right now because I'm having a beer here and I would love to have another beer here. And I would love to be able to safely drive or get home through not driving. So I think that, you know, if the question is, what could we possibly do to invest, you know, 100 million more in transit in our region? It's building out the network that we haven't had for the last 20 years. You know, I think, you know, I mean, I would love to see something east to west. I hear from my mom on the east side over by Houghton and Harrison, you know, how she would love to be able to come downtown, and, you know, how much money she could have saved when she was a U of A employee, just going, you know, on her saving her commute if she had some kind of high capacity system going there. And as a fixed income person now, she's still coming downtown most of the time. And it's like, if we want to have a thriving economy, you got to have people have money in their bank account to spend it. And, you know, cutting down on that cost for folks is a great way to achieve that. So I can come up with plenty of transit projects if we are concerned about how that 100 million will go, and they would be regional in nature, you know. And I think a small one is we're only talking about one high capacity transit project that's been submitted by the city. And I know that there's another leg of that that's being considered for another 70 million. It's not included here, of course, so I don't mean to muddle that water, but there's already, all I'm saying with that is that there's another, you know, 70 million that is in progress for development as far as a transit project that would help to connect the north side to the south side of our region. So I'm not worried about us being able to fill that.
You're not worried about being able to spend the money that your proposal is. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say anything different.
Tom, this is Diane. I don't know if you can see my hand is up.
Sure. Oh, sorry, Diane. Go ahead.
All right, thanks. Yes, I just want to emphasize and support this concept of transit funding, and want to encourage us not to be cutting out of that. If we can keep that 691, and let's say we can, we really need to remember that we're planning for the year 2046. And so I think always keeping that in mind will help. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Diane. I see Rio, do you have some info for us?
Yeah, I wanted to provide some context on the neighborhood circulator line and what the long range regional transportation plan has kind of outlined as the plan for this service. And looking forward into the future, the main things that the service could use, especially in the fixed route capacity, is higher frequency. The areas that we serve are growth areas, places like Oracle Road, Catalina, Marana, and Rita Ranch, as well as areas that traditionally have had transportation difficulties like the San Javier district and the west side, including Drexel Heights and Tucson Estates. And right now, those buses come at a 90-minute frequency. The long-range regional transportation plan seeks to change that in the midterm 5 to 10-year range by increasing frequency up to 30, and in some cases 15 minutes on certain routes for regional neighborhood shuttles. We also know that in the future, Sun Shuttle's demands are going to be even higher in the paratransit world. As the county keeps growing, We need to expand the amount of drivers we need to hire and things like that to match the pace with the growth of our service area. So that's our current long-range regional transportation plan, kind of guides how it guides us into the future of Sun Shuttle.
Good, thank you. Brian.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna have to jump off here soon too. So at the risk of losing a quorum, I wanted to ask this question. The biggest difference between my number 4 and your number 5 is the cost change to the Vale project, the City of Tucson, Pima County project. And so from the committee, before we go to the TMC here in a couple of days, I would like some feedback so we can represent it to that committee of the fully funded how I have it or the adjusted at cost as you have it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I should probably take option 5 back to the 157 and show where that lands things. And I think by the same token, if you wanted to look at 4 and change the 157 to 83 and see how that might change things, I think both of those could use to be on the same footing.
Couple questions. So cost 157, how do you budget 83? I mean, is that pedestrian bridge at this point? So
well,
I mean, if it's 157, it's one.
Well, we heard part of Marianne Cleveland is 50 million.
Yeah.
According to the city. If you did the next segment up to, I guess to Colossal Cave, I presume it would be another 30 or so million. I don't know the difference in,
But it doesn't.
if it's 2/3 up to Cienega High and then another third to get to.
But it doesn't solve the bottleneck on Colossal.
No, it doesn't.
It's not.
But Colossal Cave doesn't solve the bottleneck on Marion Cleveland either.
I don't think our traffic numbers show a bottleneck on Marion Cleveland. The only bottleneck that occurs, from my experience, is when Marion Cleveland backs into Colossal Cave because of the railroad.
Because of
Yes.
Colossal Cave.
Yeah, I mean, that's, so I think, that's just my concern. I would support option 4 as a starting point and go from there, because I know you backed in the 980 and
Yeah, that's all.
and I don't know why you need to do that. It's because the CAC framework, I think, is null and void because it was based upon a 6 cent. And I don't think we can say that's really passed since we don't get 6 cent. It's contingent upon, I think it was Kevin's amendment, right? Add that. So since that was not an option.
Well, I know, but it was a proposal that on its face was a 5/10 total expenditure, 2.34 billion. So that's all I'm saying is that with the 6/10 gone, should we be reducing everything by that, or is it really all coming out of the roadways, which it is, in order to fund the other increases, including transit?
Yeah.
And so, given that as the point, I think the fulcrum here is this 980 versus 1.1 billion. Is there something in between that can also provide us with significant improvements throughout the other elements, as well as getting a few more projects?
And I think Brian's option 4 is at 999, right? So, yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah, I would say the most expensive part of the project in Vale is getting over the railroad tracks. And if we don't do that, not that the rest of the project's a waste, but it certainly doesn't meet the objective. So that's why I left that one fully funded.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, we'll coordinate with Brian, make sure you have the updated cost estimates as well, before the meeting, before the working group meeting. TMC.
And then these these spreadsheets will be available to the rest of the committee, the rest of the CAC as well.
Well, yes,
Is it-
whatever you
does
presented
he-
today,
yeah,
we'll,
right.
we can share those by email, yes.
Yeah, okay, good, we'll do that. I know, Brian, says that he's, leaving, in a minute. Mel, do you have another comment or is your, hand just still up?
Yeah, you're.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, Brian. Oh, Brian's still there.
Yeah. All right. All right, we are actually at a point now where we are about to lose our quorum and, we're about a half hour past kind of our nominal stopping point. Got two more, comments here in the, room. Dale first.
What I would say, Mary Ann Cleveland problems might be addressed with signal here or signal there. You know, I mean, you're talking about a couple neighborhoods that are in the county, that their access road is to Mary Ann Cleveland, and there is congestion at times. Those people can't get out of those neighborhoods, and a potential signal at those locations or even stops, four-way stops, could give those people a break to get out of those neighborhoods. So there may be a simpler solution to Mary Ann Cleveland. And that's all I want.
All right, yeah, we'll talk to him about that first.
Assuming that we can resolve this issue, I would like to propose that we bring the policy considerations back off the table so that they're on the agenda for our next meeting and can be discussed. That was we
As
did
I
that by
said- As I
parliamentary.
said before, that was my intention is to, get back into that at our next meeting.
Mr. Chair,
That won't be the only thing we talk about.
No, I
clearly,
understand, but
based on today, but
on a parliamentary procedure, we tabled that, so we'd have to bring it back on to the table. So special.
agendize that.
and could you send the latest draft out again in the agenda packet of policy considerations so people have it in front of them? For our next meeting.
Okay. Yep. All right, thank you, everyone. Any other, comments about our next meeting? Please, again, plan on being here. We've skirted with our entire, with our quorum here for the past, hour and a half. And, I appreciate the effort everyone's made to get here. Mel, your hand's still up. Are you done? Yep. Yeah, stop. Okay. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
What is the next thing?
Yeah, it's 3 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.